Welcome to the Hollywood Outsider, an award-winning weekly entertainment podcast. On this episode, we're having a villain team-up battle royale, and then we're discussing timeless movies and iconic TV episodes. So let's get on with the show. My name's Aaron Peterson, and there's nobody else here currently. We are off for the next 2 weeks, if you didn't listen to our episode last week, with our next original episode coming July 13th, I believe. Sooner if we get time for a little Thor action. And who doesn't want a little Thor action? You know what I'm saying? So in the meantime, we hopped in the DeLorean, went back in time to pull some favorite topics of ours over the past year and a half or so. And with that, we have our villain team-up battle royale, timeless movies, and iconic TV episodes. Basically, you get 3 topics. Normal episodes, you only get 1. So you get 3. Bam! That's pretty amazing, I think. Remember, you can always find more information at thehollywoodoutsiders.com. You can join our Facebook group, which is The Hollywood Outsider. It's a private group. We're on Twitter at BuyPopcorn. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast feed and support the show. Plus, you can get bonus content at patreon.com/thehollywoodoutsiders. That's patreon.com/thehollywoodoutsiders. Now, I want to just get into it. I don't want to waste your time. I'm assuming if you are listening to this, you have listened before. But if not, welcome to the Hollywood Outsider. My other co-hosts, Amanda Sink, John Davenport, and Troy Heinritz, are obviously not here this week. We're taking a little break for the holiday. I hope you guys are having a wonderful time of the year, because many of you obviously are not in America. So to you, it's just going to be July 4th. Or if you're in England, the day we finally got rid of them, whichever it is. So let's start with our villain team-up battle royale. And what's fun about re-listening to this one is that A, it's fun. It's a fun episode or topic. And B, there's a debate on if Wanda, aka Scarlet Witch, actually counts as a villain. Remember, this is before Doctor Strange 2 and after WandaVision, so it's intriguing to say the least, because I wonder if people feel bad about some of their decisions in that one. Well, everybody, have a great time. I hope you're having a wonderful holiday if you have one, or just July if you don't. And remember to buy popcorn. So now let's take off with our villain team-up battle royale. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for the Hollywood Outsider Movie Battle Royale. That is where we take 8 films, 2 favorites from each of our hosts, and we determine which one is the ultimate greatest film in the entire whole universe. It is definitely a lot of fun, and it is time to get to it. Let's decide what is the greatest film of its genre. It's time for the Movie Battle Royale. So this is a Battle Royale. We haven't done one in a little bit, but the same rules as any other Battle Royale apply, except we don't have 8 properties. We have 4. We each have 1. And I'm going to explain how it works in a second, okay? Because each person gets to pick a team. Their best team, their own quote-unquote Suicide Squad, if you will, except it isn't just DC. It's any villain in film or television. So here are the rules so everybody understands them. Your team should consist of any 4 villain characters. Only 4. They must be villains from either a movie or a TV show. They're charged with saving the world from Thanos. So we're going to use Thanos because everybody knows that villain and his abilities well. So they need to be the 4 that you believe could actually do that. Now, what's most important is obviously Thanos can't be one of your villains. You have to explain how each of them is valuable to the mission. It's essentially your own Suicide Squad, so please put a lot of thought into it. Here we go. And we're going to do Ho Suicide Squad and Ho Thunderbolts. So Ho Suicide Squad is Amanda versus me, and Thunderbolts is John versus Troy. And then once we get the winner from those 2 face-offs, we will be going to the ultimate battle royale and find out who the best villain team actually is in the whole universe. You guys ready?
Yes.
Ready, Freddy.
Okay, Amanda, you can go first. Who is your villain team?
Okay, so it should come as no surprise who at least one of my villains on this team is, and that is Scarlet Witch.
Now hold right there. Hold right there. I feel like it's important to take a team because we all knew this was coming, right? Like nobody's surprised.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not at all. Not at all.
Do we still count her as a villain?
Have you seen WandaVision?
Hang on.
She's not the villain in that. Agatha's the villain.
She's the villain of her own story. And she's also the concern beyond Agnes to everybody else on the planet because of her capabilities. And that's who they're trying to stop.
She's the hero of the story.
She is not a hero.
I wouldn't agree with that either. I mean, she's torturing. She's basically holding people captive against their will. And torturing them essentially. So there's a villain argument.
She's not aware of what she's doing. So as soon as she realizes what she is doing, she stops.
That doesn't make her any less a villain prior to that. I'm sorry, Trey, go ahead.
Yeah, she is the protagonist to the antagonist, but she has villainistic qualities in the first half of the show. So I think it would count for this.
Okay. I'll side with Troy. So go ahead.
Thank you. So
because sometimes a villain is a protagonist, right? We do that other show that I can't say anymore on the show because Amanda banned me from saying it. So.
Is this a Lost reference?
No, it's the other one.
Oh, okay. The one that you have decorated on your entire bedroom. Yeah.
Yes.
So Scarlet Witch is a character that is capable of pretty much anything. And if you are familiar with the comics, you know that she is the most capable individual to take down Thanos because of her ability to modify and use and do anything with chaos magic. She can change events. She literally wiped out mutants. She has the capability to do pretty much anything if she's determined enough. And so she's the first on the team. She's the one who's really going to lead the charge because Thanos probably slapped her man and now she's pissed. Then we have Dr. Manhattan. I'm a fan of his character because although
we know why.
Well, the big blue. Who is not a fan of that? Anyhow, he is a character that is so focused on the mission and he'll do anything to complete that. This is starting to sound so sexual. I'm trying to avoid this. But he also has...
How could you at this point?
Just go with it. It makes the story so much better.
He also has an incredible level of powers attached to him.
Sure he does.
Swings to the left.
Because of his immortal abilities, he doesn't need to sleep. He doesn't need food. He doesn't need water. He needs nothing but himself. And he can...
And he can make several of himself at one time.
He can. Yes, he can. He can.
I'm going to have an orgy of me.
He's capable of levitation, so he can always get up and around Thanos. He can teleport himself so he can escape or help another one of the teammates. He is incredibly receptive to events unfolding in the past, the present, and the future. And
yeah, he is.
Oh my gosh!
Now you're trying too hard.
He is essentially a god in the fullest definition of omnipotence and omniscience and all of those great things. And so he is a huge critical piece. I give up. Dr. Manhattan, okay? I can't even get through this.
Godlike, huge, omnipotent power. That's what she said. Amanda Sink, everybody. There you go.
He does an amazing helicopter.
You know, as a woman, it is really entertaining to see that happen in real time. Anyway, so my next one is Voldemort. Who do you know that is more evil, more ugly, and more determined than Voldemort? As long as Hermione doesn't really get in his way. He can accomplish his mission. He has magic that he can use to destroy. I don't think that Thanos could punch his way to Voldemort before Voldemort would get a wand out and just swoop him away. He could cast him to another dimension because in this existence there is the multiverse, and so he could cast him to another area. He could do whatever he needed to destroy him and turn him into crumbles of dust. I also feel like Voldemort could easily sway Thanos to his side into understanding his side of things and why he would be up against Thanos. I don't really know. But that's why Voldemort's on the team. And my final member of the team, and please don't laugh at me, is Deadpool. Deadpool.
What?
Yes. Okay. So physically, I don't think that Deadpool is really a match to Thanos. But Deadpool is such a charismatic and he's a charismatic individual, but he also has the ability to persuade people to do whatever he wants. And so I think his ability to get inside Thanos' mind and turn him against what he believes in. He did this in the comics for reference.
Comics don't count.
I know. I'm just saying for reference.
Doesn't
Deadpool
matter.
did do this.
Doesn't
There's
matter.
a whole series
Had to
dedicated
be
to
in
it.
the movies and TV. That's why Doctor
understand.
Doom isn't awesome, because he sucked in the movies.
I'm just saying.
In the
I know it's possible.
Second movie, he did actually convince Thanos to come to his side. So
The
in theory.
Deadpool movie?
Yeah, the Deadpool 2.
I
he
don't
didn't.
remember this.
Was that Brolin? Yeah, Brolin
Roland's
was
not
teaming up with
Thanos.
He still
Well,
counts by
okay,
association.
technically, okay. His character is not. Stop it, Troy. Now you're messing me up.
I love it though. Thank you for that plug.
Thank you for being wrong.
Deadpool is a character that if anybody could convince someone that they are wrong about what they believe in, it's going to be Deadpool. And I think that's where he really comes in. He starts to mock, he starts to mimic, and then he somehow persuades them into going against everything they thought they knew. And so that's my team.
Okay. Well, you'll be happy to know that one of your team members made my team,
It better be Scarlet Witch.
It is
or
not.
You're wrong.
because I think it's very debatable if she's a villain. But anyway, I will meet your Dr. McHatton and throw in my...
Manhattan?
Manhattan? Yeah, whatever. Throw in my Dr. Manhattan. And, for all the things you already said, pretty much everything that covers the bases. But let's put it this way. His dong alone, I think, could take out Thanos if he clipped him at the right angle. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
He's
just swung it around a little bit, made himself whatever size he needed to be, and just, there you go.
Just do a little back and forth, like a pew.
There you go. Just like a pendulum. A pendulum
Yes,
hanging over
exactly.
Thanos. I'm going to go get the glove. No, you're not. Boom. 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 So there you go. And they kind of cancel each other out. Now, my Manhattan and your Manhattan, but whatever. My number 2 member of my team is General Zod from Man of Steel. He's basically as powerful as Superman, but with a harsher dad tone. So there. He has all the power Superman has because he's from the same stinking planet. He's got military experience, so he knows how to optimize resources and how to plan, how to strategize. He is an all-around badass weapon that is meant to bring down Thanos or anything else, really. And he almost brought Superman down. Of course, we'll have to surgically repair his neck, but that's beside the point. Number 3, Sauron. Sauron. Dude can summon an entire army at will, unleashes hell on earth. He's got the know-how to create a ring that does all this magical thing and pisses everybody off. As long as he remembers to take out the little people first, he's solid. And come on, that was funny. I thought that was piss on all of you. All right, number 4, my last member. I see your Scarlet Witch, and I smack her down with the best thinker of my bunch. That's Palpatine. He's a guy who knows how to play the long game. He's very intelligent. He's very focused on the objective. He's planning, he's strategizing, he's politicizing, he's doing all those things. Not to mention, he's the strongest Jedi around for eons. So that's my team. Dr. Manhattan, General Zod, Sauron, and Palpatine. Now,
clarify, Senator or Emperor. They're 2 different people. Because there's also Ray Palpatine now.
okay, you know who I'm talking about. Palpatine, badass wizard. All right, so now we have those 2 teams. So really, here's a trick: it's tough. We're gonna have to vote between those 2 teams, and you can't just pick yours because you think yours is the best, man. Because you love Scarlet Witch, you got to pick the best.
It's not
team.
about just loving Scarlet Witch; it's about the capabilities of Scarlet Witch.
But you got to go by only what has been on screen, not what you know from the comic books. She hasn't done a ton of stuff in the movies yet.
Well, but in WandaVision,
she wiped her out the
has.
first time. So.
Thanos did beat her once already. I'm just saying. Anyway, so here is the team. Amanda, rattle off your 4 members real quick.
Scarlet Witch, Dr. Manhattan, Voldemort, and Deadpool.
Versus Dr. Manhattan, General Zod, Sauron, and Palpatine. John.
These are very, very close, but I have to give the edge to Aaron because not a single one of his choices were Deadpool. And
wow!
It'll be funny.
And really, when it comes to like heavy hitter versus heavy hitter, Deadpool's not a heavy hitter. And as soon as he starts mouthing off to any of Aaron's choices, he would be atomized. So that's why I'm going to go with Aaron's team.
Troy?
Well, it's clear Aaron's the winner because Scarlet Witch is barely a villain. Deadpool
Wrong.
is not a villain. He's like the star of the show, and he's fighting all the bad guys. So I don't think Deadpool counts as a villain personally. Doesn't matter. Some people that are good people kill people. It happens sometimes. But from a movie perspective, he's not the villain. So you got 2 down right there. And yeah, everything that Aaron had in his list is definitely the baddest of the badasses. So easily enough. Plus, the both of you I'm very disappointed in, by the way, because you each talked about their individual qualities. It's supposed to be a team. You never said how they're going to work together to beat them. So you're both disqualified.
Did too.
Barely.
I mean, she took my back to Manhattan theory, but I mean, yeah, they're going to work to a team.
You barely combined your stories. I'm disappointed.
I did too. I said what things they were going to do in the team. Everybody has to take a task.
Independently.
All of them
everyone has their own task, and then Scarlet Witch is the leader.
Yes, and then they work together to bring them down. It doesn't matter. I won, so we're just going to go past anything I have to do.
Whatever.
So my team moves on. Don't hold it against me.
If Deadpool doesn't count, can I offer an alternative?
Nope.
So rude.
Nope.
You can't lose and then be like, let me change.
Well, no, I'm just saying if that's the reason I'm losing is because he is disqualified, then I need to know that so then I can offer an alternative.
No, because John and I did not voice that complaint, so we're good. We're moving on.
Whatever.
He can be seen as a villain. I can see it. Sure. All right.
You're only saying that because you won.
Yeah, exactly. All right, now Ho Thunderbolts.
That's how winning works.
That's how winning works. You just accept it and you move on. Ho Thunderbolts. This is Bolts. Jesus, Aaron. This is John versus Troy. John, who is your team?
All right, so I got a pretty impressive team, I believe, and I have a lot of faith in this team. I think they can be pulling off a lot of things. Some of these names you've heard before. Let me start off with the leader of my team, Emperor Palpatine. So that I don't have to sit there and deal with who, what, where, which Palpatine. It's the Emperor, who knows how to play the long game, who can con anyone he wants to con. And not only that, but he can kick the crap out of just about anybody, with the exception of a father who can't kill his son. That's besides the point. And even then, he lived, sort of, technically. So you got Emperor Palpatine. He's the leader of my group. My tactician is going to be HAL 9000, because how are you not going to have a great tactician who's a super fast computer that just happens to be evil as well?
That's interesting.
So really, all HAL is going to do is be able to sit down and figure out every single one of Thanos' moves before he makes his moves, and then how to counteract Thanos' evil with evil computer evilness. My infiltrator, the guy who's going to be doing a whole lot of damage, jumping in, jumping out, doing everything pretty intense, a little bit of snicker snacking it, is going to be Freddy Krueger. Because how are you going to beat
Snicker snacking it? Can you please?
Yes.
The judges need to know what that even means. I don't.
It's the whole the whole Wolverine noise from the comics.
Okay.
But I was trying to mislead everyone by thinking it was going to be Wolverine, but I realized that I'm not dealing with that crowd right now.
Okay.
So, anywho, Freddy Krueger, Dream Demon, can become real, he can become real and do a lot of damage. He can get into the brain and to somebody's psyche and do a lot of damage that way. Like, he can just hit Thanos from every single direction. And finally, my heavy, I have the heaviest of heavies coming in to do the big hits, can send Thanos flying, turn him into dust, abracadabra in him, and it's going to be Lord Voldemort. And those are my choices.
Well, you got one of them right.
Yeah. Maybe one.
Which one? The one that was beaten by kids 9 times in a row? That one? Is that the one you're talking about?
That's the one that I put in my team.
We can't speak his name. Why can't we? Because he's such a bitch. How the little kids beat him every time he comes up. All right.
I took the assignment seriously and actually had an actual story where all 4 people worked together
oh my gosh.
as a team in order to take Thanos down.
Wait, I just described how my team works together.
Barely.
What?
Okay, Troy.
Let me show you how it's done, John.
Oh boy, here we go.
So in my story, Thanos is going to be walking along and he's going to run into this little tiny creature called Gollum. And because Thanos has this philosophy kind of thinker, he's really intrigued by this tiny creature and his battle between Smeagol and Gollum. And so he follows Gollum into a cave where he runs into 1955's Biff Tannen, who is such a bad line deliverer that Thanos just gets bored to tears with how Biff is talking to him. And so as he just gets more just disgusted and repelled by Biff, and he gets so bored with it, he actually falls to sleep. And so while he's sleeping, he runs into Freddy Krueger, who is coming and chasing after him in his sleep. with, in his hand, the Infinity Gauntlet modified with razor blades, which then causes Thanos to panic because he realizes he doesn't have the Infinity Gauntlet anymore and he can't accomplish his mission. Eventually, he does finally wake up and escapes Freddy Krueger, but because he's so scared when he wakes up, Pennywise the clown is standing over him and eats him and his fear. Thanos is dead on the spot.
I have to give it to him. He is very creative with his use of characters.
Yeah, he even got Biff Tannen in here.
I know. That's actually funny.
I don't know. This is sounding like he's earning his own like golden box of flies right now.
That sounded like a compliment from the guy I'm about to beat.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
So, Thunderbolts. What, John? Who's your team again?
My team is Hal 9000, Emperor Palpatine, Freddy Krueger, and Lord Voldemort.
Okay.
And mine was Gollum, 1955's Biff Tannen, Freddy Krueger, and Pennywise the Dancing Clown.
All right, Amanda, who do you pick?
I'm going to go with Troy's team. I really did. I did not think that I would buy into most of those characters to be able to beat Thanos, but I do appreciate the layout of how this story works and how these characters could be beneficial in working together. John also chose Voldemort, though, so I think he deserves some credit.
Honestly, that's the one that's making me go to Troy's team. I don't like Voldemort as a villain. I think he's one of the worst villains in film history. I don't care what everybody else says. I mean, a lot of buildup, and he was beat down by a little kid, or a teenager, sorry. And every year, he was thwarted by these same little kids or his friends. I mean, it just doesn't seem like he's really that badass, honestly. And the nose. What was up with the nose? It's just weird. Other than the fact that's really all I got out of him. That's not scary. I'm gonna go with Troy because he really did think it out. He's got the whole plan. He's got a plan. Not much like the A-team. It's gonna go to shit, but it's a better one to go up against my team.
He is banking on a lot of things happening exactly. Like, if he doesn't find Gollum intriguing at all, this whole plan goes to shit.
But John, I do like your team. I like both you and Amanda's teams, but neither one of them made it to the final round. So here we go.
So we didn't like them enough.
Right.
All right. So
losers.
This is the finals. My team versus Troy's team.
Oh, it's like old times. Team Troy, Team Aaron.
My team is Dr. Manhattan, General Zod from Man of Steel, Sauron, and Palpatine. Versus Troy.
I had Gollum, 1955's Biff Tannen, Freddy Krueger with the modified Infinity Gauntlet, and Pennywise the Dancing Clown.
Okay. John, who is your vote?
I'm going to make this a spiteful decision.
Oh, Jesus.
Because I feel like I've been abandoned. I don't even understand how my team lost to this team, but I'm going to make it so that Troy's team is the one I'm giving my decision to, because it's like just so insane to think his team can win. But Troy, for whatever reason, is actually really good with these insane off the wall theories that they end up actually working.
That's a Blacklist reference for all you folks who don't understand it.
Amanda?
I'm going to start to split the vote. I'm going to go with Aaron's team. He had one of my characters who I believe is an incredible feat to have on your team, but he also has some really good evil people who are somehow eviler than Thanos. I don't think that's a word, but it is in my book now. And I do believe that they could, if they had a common unified purpose for defeating Thanos, that they could sort of work together. But I still think Troy's story was much better than yours.
Troy, who do you think is going to win between your team and my team?
Well, I mean, your team is stacked, but as we know from the NBA this year, a stacked team doesn't technically make it to the finals. A team that actually works together wins, like the Milwaukee Bucks, which is my hometown.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, I think from that perspective, you might have all the power, but Thanos just snaps his finger and wipes you guys all out. So
I know that you're in HR, but
anyway.
have you considered sales?
I actually did sales for many years.
Well,
I think in fairness, we can't really vote for ourselves. I think in true Thanos fashion, right? 50% live, 50% die. So I think we have to pick a number between 1 and 100.
Nope, we're not doing
Whoever's
that.
closer gets the
Because I'm
win.
going with my team. We're gonna phone a friend. We're gonna do this.
Who are we phoning?
Who are
We're
we
calling
phoning?
Tyler Seaver.
Oh.
Oh.
Here we go.
Is
We're gonna
this
put him.
fair if he's one of your best friends?
Hello.
Hey, Tyler, you're on a podcast right now. I'm just letting you know. Yeah.
Good thing I didn't say anything bad.
Can you guys hear him okay?
Yes.
Yeah, we can hear fine.
Okay, so we have a question and we need a deciding vote. Are you ready?
Oh, shoot. All right, let's go.
Okay, so here's the setup. Each of us had to pick a team consisting of 4 villain characters. There was only 4, so basically our own Suicide Squads to save the world from Thanos. You understand?
Okay.
Okay, so here's my team versus Troy's team. Actually, no, I'm not going to say that. Here is Amanda. Just do it in any order because I don't want him to know which team is my team and which team is Troy's team. So put it that way.
Can you hear Amanda say the team?
Oh, he can't hear Amanda. Okay.
I can't. That does put a damper on things.
Just say team 1 and team 2.
Team 1 and team 2. Okay, I'm not going to tell you which team is which. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So team 1, these villains: Gollum, Biff Tannen, Freddy Krueger, and Pennywise the Dancing Clown.
I feel like you should read the story, though.
Okay, well, I should read the story. The story is Thanos would be intrigued by the creature's plight and his internal battle. He would be lured into following him into a cave where Biff Tannen waits to bore Thanos because he's dumb as a box of rocks, and he eventually falls asleep. Freddy Krueger haunts him in his dreams, terrified for his life. He runs since Freddy has the gauntlet instead of him because he switched it, manages to escape and wake up, but ill from fear from his nightmares and not able to check his wrist for the gauntlet. He wakes up to see Pennywise is there who finishes the job. Okay, that's the setup for that one.
Okay.
The other one has less setup and just the players. Okay, so the villains in the other team are Dr. Manhattan, General Zod from Man of Steel, Sauron from Lord of the Rings, and Emperor Palpatine. Which of those 2 teams would be the best to defeat Thanos?
Team 2 sounds more believable, but Team 1, just because Biff Tannen. Who the hell is
You son of a bitch.
Sorry, Aaron.
All right. Well, we're done with you.
Glad I could help.
Yes. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your service.
No problem.
All right. Take care.
All right, later.
Bye.
Bye.
Damn it, Troy. Damn it.
It's the stupid story. It's so clever that
We're
it
doomed.
somehow works.
We just lost 50% of the population. I promise you we did. Biff Tannen will ruin
I
it.
think it bumped up to 75% because this was so ridiculous.
I think he's going to take more people out. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the winner is Troy's team. Troy, that's Gollum, Biff Tannen, Freddy Krueger, and Pennywise. That's who we're charging to save us all. Jesus. All right, this week we are discussing timeless movies, those films that still hold up decades later against modern effects and scrutiny. Now, this is very important. This isn't based on greatness. This isn't the movies we rewatch the most. This isn't something around those lines. That's not what I'm talking about. These are decided by their ability to almost look and feel the same to you now as they did when you first saw them. Doesn't mean like they look like they just released. I don't mean that. I just mean they still hold up in quality, special effects. Just everything about it still really holds up in your eyes. That's what we're talking about. So now, do you think it's fair, Troy, I'll start with you since you haven't talked in a little bit. Do you think it's fair to look at an older film through the lens that we see things through today? Like if it was made in 1975 and we say, God, those effects are awful. Is that fair since we're basing it on the CGI that we currently have?
I don't think so. I think it's hard because when you think about classic movies, it's really our timeless movies. I don't want to say classic, but I know we were having a conversation about what constitutes a classic movie. Like what's the era that you can really call something timeless or classic, if you will. I think that there's a level of, it's not just about CGI. It's about story. It's about, the actors and the craftsmanship. And I think if anybody's judging a timeless movie strictly based on, oh, we get computer graphics today. We were just talking about Luca, right? It's all animated. It's all computer graphics. It's all great. It's never going to be a timeless movie because it's not good from a story perspective. Story matters first. And then how you present that story in a way that people can come back to time and time again, because Netflix wants you to stick in the ecosystem and keep rewatching stuff. I think story trumps CGI every time. So no, I'm not going to say those effects are god awful. I'm going to say things like Star Wars Episode 3 special effects. When you look at them today, yeah, it looks like crap because it was done poorly. Whether that's a timeless film, I don't think it matters if the CGI causes it to be that way. I think if the story's good, you could probably forgive it.
I would say that you can be more forgiving of it, but I would say that there's a distinction I would make for this question. Is it fair to look at them in comparison to what we have today? No, it's not fair. I think that you should kind of reasonably apply, that this is where things were when this movie was made. However, when we're talking about a timeless film, those classics that seem to hold up for decades and decades and decades, that's not something you usually have to worry about. I would say Star Wars is probably one of the fewer ones listed in this classic timeless section that doesn't have the effects that hold up and you can still be forgiving of it. When I think about something like Jaws, I can look at that and say, I know that they didn't have effects. The shark broke. So they adapted and did what they had to do filmmaking wise, and it worked tremendously. I mean, who knows what the movie would have been like if that hadn't happened with the shark. But they made the best of it, and that's still a movie, all these years later where you can sit back and say, wow, that is creepy. That is, you still are afraid to be in the water. You could be in a pool, an isolated pool, and be like, what's under my feet? What just touched me? So that's where a timeless classic film can still have that effect, even if they didn't have the necessary CGI or budget or anything like that.
What's funny is anytime you watch Jaws or with some people, they're always going to tell you, the shark didn't work the whole time, right? Like, it's not the most known film fact in history, but inevitably
Right.
Someone will at some point tell you.
They wrote the script as the movie went along.
Yeah, it's great. Fantastic movie.
I mean, Tracy's actually really good. My wife, she's a great example of this. So when she started her Star Wars journey, she watched episodes 1, 2, 3 first in the 90s in the theater. And then before I let her watch A New Hope, we actually watched Rogue One first and then watched A New Hope like almost immediately after.
Oh, your version of a proper order kind of thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just because she had never seen 4, 5, and 6. So why not watch it in the chronological order? And she said that she actually liked A New Hope better than Rogue One because it's a better story.
Oh, yeah, Rogue One is garbage.
The effects didn't bother her at all. So I would say Star Wars: A New Hope is a timeless movie.
Well, let me ask you let me speak to that. Okay, so we're talking about Star Wars holds up. I get it. But those effects that you're watching, unless you have, a very coveted version of it, are not the original effects. So does that count? Like, does that count as a timeless movie if George Lucas kept tinkering with the damn thing?
Oh.
Legit question.
I guess it depends on if it's considered, if a re-release is considered the original theatrical version, or if you're comparing the timeless to the theatrical version.
Well, you can't really get like the HD original theatrical anymore. I mean, I've got it on DVD, but it's also in 2.0. I mean, they didn't make it in, so I mean, it still holds up, I think, but nobody's watching that version. Everybody's watching the one that Lucas made the explosions better and added a bunch of stuff to. So does that still count as timeless? Because I would argue that the Jabba the Hutt scene, right, that they inserted into A New Hope.
Oh, we don't talk about that though.
It's really bad, isn't it? Like, it's bad.
It's really bad.
So that, to me, it actually I'm going to say it, and people can get mad if they want. To me, that kills the timeless aspect of it, because it was timeless until you added that. That hurt the movie to me. That took it from being a perfect movie to being an imperfect movie.
He walked behind a guy and stepped up on a step stool and stepped off the step stool.
So distracting.
It's so bad.
It's so distracting. But you get what I'm saying, though? It's like,
Totally.
I love Star Wars. I really, really do. Even though I don't love all the new stuff, I love Star Wars, the original trilogy especially. And that first one was a movie I watched over and over, and I just love the original version. I didn't care that the explosion wasn't as sexy as George Lucas could possibly manage. It looked great to me. And it still looks, I've still got that old version. I still look at it now and again. Holds up. And then, yes, the new explosion looks better, but the other stuff kind of hurt the film. Like that Jabba the Hutt scene is bad.
Giant monster that blocks, Mos Eisley and on Tatooine when they come up for the first time, and it's like the monster walks across the screen like so close to the screen. It's like, oh my gosh, like, what is up with that?
Didn't see the camera there.
Well, and I feel like there's a distinction between a timeless film, which is what we're talking about, and a classic. I would say that Star Wars falls into the classic, of course. This is something that's embedded into our pop culture. It is something that everyone knows, but being a timeless film in the way that we're talking about it, where the effects and everything hold up the same, we would have to look at it and say, I'm not affected by the way the effects are in this movie. And from everything you're both saying, you even agree that this does not hold up the same as it did when you had seen it in the theaters. So to me, then I would say that this is not timeless. It's still just a classic.
I would put Empire as timeless, but I would not put the original Star Wars as timeless, because if I watch it now, I grin and over several pieces where Geppetto couldn't stop tinkering in his shop.
I suppose that's true. There isn't a lot of changes in the Empire, because even Return of the Jedi has some really egregious changes as well in Jabba's palace. Cloud
City, but I like that change.
I guess the question is are you judging it based on Star Wars Episode 4 or Star Wars Episode 4.5?
I would say you have to base it on the version that you watch. And currently we can't watch the original version because it doesn't really exist anymore in most forms.
Well, you and I can.
Well, yeah.
Well, I would...
Yeah. Hard to do it.
I would also say if you were to show this to your wife, for example, Troy, you were talking about how your wife had not seen Star Wars, and so you introduced it to her. Say that your illegal ways had not worked or something. However, you would see the original. She would be watching the 4.5. So
sure.
It would be, a timeless film, in my opinion, at least, and how I see and define them is you could show it to your child or your grandchild or something, and they're still going to like it and enjoy it and engage with it, even if they didn't see it when it came out. But then it still is enjoyable for them. The effects hold up for them, even if they're like, wow, that's different. It's not like, dang, they messed up here. It's there's a distinction for me in that respect too.
I think it's fair.
Interesting. That was an interesting debate. I kind of wonder what listeners think. Like, does Star Wars count? Does it count? Can it count? Or does it, if you're not bothered by it, and I guess maybe it could register as timeless for you. But in terms of the question, yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys, and it's not really fair to judge it by today's effects. I mean, timeless means I can just watch it and it holds up, regardless of when it was made. Like Jurassic Park is one I know many people talk about. If you watch Jurassic Park today, the effects are not distracting. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, no, totally awesome.
Yep. This is on my list.
Every day and twice on Sunday.
See, so that's the definition of timeless. Whenever the effects were made, it doesn't distract from the movie. Like it doesn't, like Ghostbusters is one where I thought real hard about this. That's not timeless to me. The comedy, the story, all of that is, but as soon as you get to the scene with Rick Moranis and he's looking at the dogs, takes me right out of the movie. Takes me right out of the movie.
Is that because you're seeing like the up-resed Blu-ray version versus the original DVD?
No,
copy?
it's because that's never not bothered me. I thought the effects were not great then, and now it really bothers me. And it's not because of how the effects are now. I know that they weren't great for the time. You know what I mean? Like they just never were great effects. It never was seamless. It always looked kind of clunky. And when the dogs run through the streets and everything else. So it's always bothered me. So it's not timeless to me. I can't put it in a timeless category.
Maybe we were just younger at that time, because I thought watching the dogs the first time, it was fine. But yeah, if I watch it now, the dogs definitely are, especially the Rick Moranis running away into the glass at the restaurant. Like that's just not good.
No, it's not. I mean, classic, definitely one of the best movies of all time.
Right.
Timeless? No, I couldn't put it there. I just couldn't. So here's a question I want to ask, and it's no honorable mentions. You could have all the movies, we'll do them after, but I want one movie. When you think of timeless movies, what is the very first movie you think of and why?
So when you posed the idea for the topic, the first one that came to mind was Back to the Future. This is one that I have a special love for because of the script. I think the screenwriting in this is just brilliant. But even visually, I've watched this movie with people who had never seen it before and are young, so they weren't even alive when it came out. And they still really enjoy it. Nothing bothers them. Nothing bothers me. I feel like, especially for a movie where you're going back in time and the time frames, you're going in the future. And you are now past the point, like I think it's 2014 or 2015 that they're going to. We're past that point. And if you can still watch that movie past that year where they're going into the future, even knowing like, okay, none of this stuff really happened, so they didn't predict the future, but that doesn't bother or detract you from enjoying the movie. The movie is still great. It's still fun. And it still is not gimmicky in the time travel thing, which is one of the hardest feats to overcome, I feel like, for a movie, because if you get too lost in the nuances of how the time travel works and how the ramifications are and everything, then you're kind of clunking down your audience and they're not able to enjoy it as much as they could. Back to the Future does a really great balance of, we have some of the science here that we're going to go into, but it's more about the characters and the fun and the story than it is the travel itself. So it's just one of those that is a classic, but it also stands up for me.
You know what? It's funny you say Back to the Future, because this is a movie. This is how good Back to the Future is, right? And I'm going to ruin your childhood here in a second. It's a movie that dabbles in incest, and it has a white guy that totally steals black music, and it's still one of the best movies of all time.
Okay, well, when you put it that way, it makes you uncomfortable.
I'm just saying. But timeless, absolutely.
Not to mention that Doc Brown stole Charlie Chaplin's Hanging from the Clock Tower as well.
Yeah, true. There you go. It's definitely timeless, though. I've watched, the sequels, no, not at all. But the first one, for whatever reason, the effects still work. I mean, they were great. It feels pretty flawless. Good one.
I mean, you said pick one, but I the one I always comes to mind when everyone says timeless movie, I always say It's a Wonderful Life. Like that movie, you could watch that movie every single year and you watch the whole thing through and it's super long and sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, it's so boring. But for some reason you always watch it when it comes on. But technically there's no real special effects happening.
Doesn't have to have special effects.
Yeah. But I mean, if you were saying like comparing it to like modern day special effects, if you were thinking like something that would actually be there, I'd put Goonies in there. Like Goonies would be the first one that comes to mind, where you could just sit down and watch Goonies any day of the week. 1.0, not Goonies 1.5 with the octopus.
Yeah, that was weird.
I would not put this film in the timeless category.
You would or wouldn't?
I would not. I'm not crazy about it.
Goonies or Wonderful Life?
No, I'm talking about It's a Wonderful Life, not the Goonies.
Okay. Let's see, now I'm confused because Troy he couldn't stay with the rules, which,
yeah, I know. He completely
Which movie is your movie that
them.
you're talking about?
The first one I wrote down is It's a Wonderful
Then that's
Life.
the movie you're talking about. We'll come. Thank God. I thought Amanda was saying she didn't like Goonies, and then I was just going to have to boot her
I
from the
love
show.
Goonies. Yeah, Goonies is great.
But not liking It's a Wonderful Life, I think, is a bigger problem. Why? Do you hate someone who's obviously grappling with depression? I mean, you're like an advocate for depression and mental health awareness.
Okay.
This is your movie. And he saves Christmas.
I'm
or
not
they
saying
save
that I
Christmas.
don't
Somebody
like
saves
the
Christmas?
movie. I'm just saying, as someone who saw it many, many, many years after it came out, it does not feel, I don't have that same magical feeling that everybody else does about it. It doesn't, when I watch it, I'm like, yeah, this was made a long time ago. Like I get that feeling. And it's not because
it's black and white, though. You're not saying
no. It's just there's certain distinctions about it where it feels like it was made then. And I don't feel like this is something that would have been made in the same way now. So to me, I think it's a classic film. I totally agree that this is a classic film. I think it's on everybody's like number one for Christmas movies. And
It's
everybody
number 2,
watches it all
but
the time. But for me,
maybe number 3.
you're number 3?
Well, yeah, because Elf and A Christmas Story are
See,
clearly
I feel
above
like
that.
Elf is more of a classic than anyway. So, but I feel like it's
like
a great
I don't even want to know you
movie.
people.
I don't disregard the value of it and the beauty of it, but I don't feel like it's timeless.
Feels like you're disregarding all the value of it. Like it's a
I mean,
wonderful movie.
It covered a lot of topics that were like taboo to talk about at the time when it came out originally, and yet we're still trying to deal with some of those topics even today.
Absolutely.
And that's why it comes out every single year, so people can just get hit over the head over and over and over again with these concepts.
And it's talking about, I mean, it approaches mental health in a beautiful, beautiful way that is so ahead of its time because nobody, like Troy said, was talking about it at that time. Now it's very topical, obviously. But you had a character for most of the movie, he has a great life, and then it just falls apart quickly for him, and that's how he spirals so quickly and thinks the best thing to do for everybody is me just to die. Like it's such a dark and dour movie in many respects, but it's also a very upbeat, beautiful movie. And to me, it holds up. If it's not timeless for you, man, so be it. I mean, for Troy it is, but it's not for everybody. And it introduced, by the way, the splitting basketball court, the pool underneath that court was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen in my life. And I really still, if I ever become filthy rich, I'm getting one. Okay. Well, mine is Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Of course it is.
Of course it is.
Is it wrong?
I'm shocked.
Is
right
it
now.
wrong?
But sorry, sorry, hang on. I fell out of my chair. I was so shocked.
You were so shocked.
I was so shocked. It was Sean Connery. That was the third movie. We're talking about the first one.
That's funny.
So Raiders of the Lost Ark, I think, is not just because Indiana Jones is the greatest hero of all time. It's just true. It's not up for debate.
Versus even better than Spider-Man.
Until the 5th movie comes out, and then we're all going to be like, "Eee."
Indiana Jones and the Pursuit of a Hip. It was a movie that still holds up, and I watch it all the time. I mean, it's not my favorite Indiana Jones movie. I know that's sacrilege, but Temple of Doom is my favorite. But Raiders of the Lost Ark is a movie that start to finish, I don't know how he managed to pull it off, but I think a lot of it has to do with Spielberg was already filming it as a period piece. So you're already behind the times, so to speak. So he didn't have to do a lot of flashy effects. The truck chase is still, I think, the best piece of action in cinema history. I really think from start to finish that scene is the most well put together action scene in film history. Still holds up to this day. People try to copy it all the time. Wonder Woman just basically tried to redo that whole scene. I mean, it gets mimicked and copied all the time.
Like almost verbatim, you would say?
Yeah, I would say it's the same damn scene. Yeah. They said it was an homage. I'm like, that's a Tarantino homage. That was just basically a ripoff.
Totally.
And the hero is flawed but fabulous. The heroine is tough but timely. I mean, she's such a great character because she's not a damsel in distress. I mean, she's somebody that's formidable. And
yes,
the villain is formidable, but also kind of relatable. Like you can kind of understand, where Belloc is coming from to various degrees. And the ultimate bad guys are Nazis, which means everybody gets to hate them. Like there's no debate on that. Bad, bad, bad. There's, all the way across the board. And even when they get to the one special effect where the faces melt off and you kind of wonder, does that still hold up? I find that it does. I find that it doesn't bother me.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely it does.
In any way, shape, or form. So, and I know Big Bang Theory had their little thing about how that plot doesn't work and Indiana Jones didn't matter. It's dumb. It's wrong. I can't deal with it. I just can't. So please don't shout that at me. Nate Bruce, I'm talking to you. You keep wanting to tell me about this. It's wrong. It's wrong. It's wrong. They got that whole debate and argument wrong. Indiana Jones is the only reason they found the Ark. Indiana Jones is the only reason that the Ark was in United States custody. That's all I'm going to say. I'm walking away from it.
It's true.
Makes me tired. Whew. All right, so let's talk about some other timeless movies. This is open discussion. Just throw out some movies you think are timeless. And if we debate it, so be it. Now, Goonies, Troy, why don't you just start with Goonies? Because you got kind of cut off with that one since you tried to steamroll it into an honorable mention. So what about Goonies? Why is that timeless?
Because I'm still waiting to this day that some theme park will build the Goonies water slide that puts me in the middle of a pirate ship when I come out on the other end.
That's what makes it timeless because of that?
Every time I watch it, I'm like, they need to build that water slide. They totally need to build the water slide. No, I think it's just, you could pick up the Goonies and you could put it into today's environment. Someone could sit down and watch it and go, oh, this is a great movie. It's about that 80s era or something because of the cars. But you could watch it today and I think people would absolutely love it. You could re-release it in the theater and people would go like, there's a new movie called The Goonies. Let's go watch it. And people would go watch it and not realize that it actually came out back in the 80s. Because it's really that good. I actually watched it with my kids, and the kids were like, "This was in the 80s. This is really fun." So I think that's really the test. It's like if the kids like it and it's an old movie, then you know it's timeless.
You don't think today's audiences would be like, "It's so weird that Mikey makes out with his brother's girlfriend"?
It was Carrie Green. I'd make out with my brother's girlfriend.
Just checking. All right.
They might be confused why Martha Plimpton looks so different, but because they were watching some TV show that Martha Plimpton was in, but
I didn't even know she was still in one. That's good for her. I would throw in Casablanca. I think Casablanca is a movie that still is pretty timeless. Now, granted, it's black and white, but there's nothing flashy or it's really all about story characters and the story and the characters and the love story and really how nobody wins in that story. I mean, nobody really gets what they really want in that story. So it's kind of a sad love story, and it still plays. It's still beautiful. The acting's pretty stellar, and it's one where I can, even though I will honestly say it's not even like one of my favorite movies. It's not, but whenever I've watched it, I'm like, this is a rare movie of that time that really still holds up.
Well, I'm going to put two together just because they come from the man, the myth, the legend, the Spielberg. So Jaws and E.T. We talked already about Jaws a little bit, but E.T. is just one of those that I don't know how this weird, creepy alien thing doesn't actually seem outdated. You know, I don't know how that it just doesn't make sense to me, but it works. It still works. I feel like I could show this to my goddaughters and they would be like, oh my gosh, he's weird and creepy, which is fine because everybody thought he was weird and creepy then too. But it very still
slimy.
Works.
He's very slimy.
Yeah. And it's just a beautiful story that is not one that's gone away. I feel like that's a timeless story itself.
It's an absolutely beautiful movie. I just rewatched it not too long ago. And besides the fact that it looks like E.T.'s dipped in KY jelly, besides that, it's very much one of the greatest friendship stories, I think, in film. Like, it's just such a beautiful, selfless friendship story about a boy and an alien who come together. They care about each other. They help each other. And it's just very emotional and beautiful and all the way around. And Amanda, you're talking about Jaws. Who doesn't? I mean, I do watch that every single year, at least once per year, if not more. And I don't think, aside from Raiders, obviously, I can't think of another movie that holds up as well as Jaws does, especially for a horror movie. How many horror movies do you watch 40 years later that still are as effective now as they were then, especially when it's about a giant mechanical shark that was broken?
And because they literally made the movie as they went.
Yeah.
With the thing that didn't work.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
It's so funny. I'm going to throw out National Lampoon's Vacation. Classic Chevy Chase. The jokes land every single time, funny. Even in today's culture. The Pac-Man scene where it's taking Pac-Man across and throwing the old Atari up there. I think that's fantastic. That graphic still holds up because it's from that time. All of National Lampoon's Vacation is just fantastic. I mean, we were literally when we went to Disney 2 weeks ago and they were thinking they weren't going to let us in because of the COVID stuff, because it was supposed to be only California residents, which is such a bunch of garbage, even if you're vaccinated. We did get in, by the way. But I literally, as we were walking up, I was literally like, I'm totally going to bring a BB gun to the front gate.
It is.
So if you could just quote National Lampoons like that out of nowhere and just be like, where's Mickey Mouse? I'm going to totally be like, where's that damn out dream like Marty Moose? I think that's when you can call up memes and conversations, and that way you just know that movie's timeless, because then you could just go home and watch it, which I did.
Did you strap your grandma on the roof?
No, grandma did not travel with us.
Just checking.
But if she did, I was only a mile from the thing, so since I had no room in the car because the car I rented was super small, I totally would have.
Nice.
Poor grandma.
I got you a seat. Don't bitch about it. It's free.
It's 2 blocks, Grandma. You'll be fine.
I'm glad you said that one and not Christmas Vacation, because Christmas Vacation I don't think is timeless, but I would say Vacation is.
We have to be careful, too, because you have to say National Lampoon's Vacation, because Vacation sucked.
Yes. The National Lampoon's Vacation. Chevy Chase.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I mean, I do love me Christmas Vacation. I do.
I'm not knocking the movie.
watch
I'm
that
just saying
every-
it's not timeless. Like, it's very dated. Like, when you watch it, it's like, oh, that's from the 80s, for sure.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Even, which is
Or
weird,
90s,
even more
whatever.
so than National Lampoon's Vacation is, which is odd since it was actually, I think it was a early 90s movie when Christmas Vacation came out.
Yeah. I want to throw out a couple John Hughes movies. That's what I want to throw out.
Oh, those are always timeless.
It's
Yes.
crazy. What, did you want to do it
To
first,
all
Amanda?
of
Go for it.
them. No, go ahead.
Okay. Breakfast Club, I think we still compare ourselves to those kids. Like when we're I think high school kids today still see themselves as those kids. It was such a perfect
Yeah.
realization, I guess is the right word, of the different classes in a high school system, of the ecosystem of high school, of the different types of personalities. And even though now, obviously, they look very different, the types of personalities are very, very similar for many people. So that is one that really holds up. And Ferris Bueller's Day Off is also one where I think, you can rewatch it and I think it still is timeless.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, every Thanksgiving required viewing.
Sure. Well,
a good
I
one.
want to be careful. Like, you start teetering between classic and what's timeless. So do you consider Planes, Trains, and Automobiles like a timeless movie?
Yes.
Okay.
I do.
I actually would still consider that one timeless too.
Okay. Just because he's got that fantastic monologue at the car rental place, which we've all thought about. And if you've never found
Right.
it, go on YouTube and find Emma Stone recreated that. I don't remember which talk show it was, but when she was promoting Cruella, she actually did that verbatim from memory, and it was pretty stellar.
Wow, that's impressive.
I have a few 90s movies which, they obviously are getting a little bit close, but
All right.
not too close.
So we're going to vote then.
And-
All right, let's go.
Titanic, definitely timeless to me. Is that one timeless for you all?
Which one?
Titanic.
Yes. I would. That one's tough because it has a personal place in my heart, and I love the movie.
See, I go classic because I go what Titanic and James Cameron were able to do with the movie and what it did for cinema. I would fall it under classic versus timeless.
No, you know what? I could see that. I could see timeless on that one. I could. Just because it still holds up. I mean, I watched it not too long ago, and there's not a flaw in that movie. The effects are phenomenal. Like, even
You
for
mean except for the fact that there was plenty of room for him on that board? Plenty of room for him to slide up there.
I didn't say it didn't have its flaws, Troy. It's got its flaws. Mainly that Rose was a murderer.
Okay, another one which I don't feel is debatable, Toy Story.
I could see that.
I could see that.
Yep.
And my other 90s one is Scream.
No, that's...
Actually, Scream and Shawshank Redemption. I had both of those. Shawshank was 90s, wasn't it?
Yep, sure.
Shawshank
Yeah.
is timeless.
I love Scream. One of the best movies of all time. I don't know if it's timeless, though. Well,
Really? I feel like I could watch it now and I would still... It would...
No, so you can't.
maybe I would.
It doesn't have the same effect. Like
I
when you
feel
watch
like it does.
once, maybe twice, you were like, "Oh, this is really good." But now that you know like the whole trick of it,
Oh, no.
it doesn't have the same.
You are wrong,
the same replay.
sir.
This is...
I watch
is-
that
yeah.
movie yearly.
You might get an
Annual
ejection seat here.
basis.
I don't know, man. That's a fantastic, like, you could do that with the sequels. I think a lot of them, they rely a little too much on the surprise as a gimmick in the sequels, even though they still hold up as movies. But all right, I could probably see timeless for Scream. I think it's, there's a lot of datedness there because there's a lot of 90s references too. Like, there's a lot of pop culture references in it. That's the part that hurts it from being timeless, because it's too pop culture centric. But a lot of those,
And were you thumbs up for Shawshank Redemption?
yeah, I don't think there's any debate. Shawshank.
Oh, yeah.
I had one more 90s that I forgot to mention.
Sure.
Pulp Fiction. I mean, it's on my list, but I forgot to say it.
Yes. Again, similar to Raiders. It was shot in it's paced in an earlier seeming time. So I think it holds up so much better because it dates itself as a movie.
So then in the vein of like Breakfast Club and John Hughes films, would you then say Clueless and Mean Girls would fit into that category?
Mean Girls, I would. I could see Mean Girls. Clueless, I think, is very much a product of its time.
Mean Girls still has a few years to go before I could consider it a timeless or classic film. Because I feel like you have to have that 20-year mark.
What year was it? Do you know?
2004.
Okay.
It was a really early aughts. Okay. I thought it was right at the end of the 90s.
That's how old you are.
I know. Well, speaking of the 20-year mark then, let's go back to E.T. Because E.T. had a 20th anniversary release where E.T. is literally floating in a bathtub and it looks terrible. So
But they retcon that. They like if you
did they?
Yeah, I've got a brand new Blu-ray, or I bought it last year, and it does not have that. It does not have that extra shit, and it doesn't have the where he took the guns out and everything else. It doesn't have that.
Oh, really? Okay. I'll have to check to see if I got my my digital copy got retouched up.
Maybe I stole it.
Ooh.
I don't know.
Retouched up.
Maybe, but I didn't have that. It was. But I see what you're saying. I mean, they added some stuff that they shouldn't.
Because then
have
E.T. would fall in the same category as Star Wars because you had the going back in and messing it up.
Mm-hmm. There was no need for that one. That one was just, it's timeless as it is.
That was a cash grab.
Yep.
That was 100% a cash grab.
Yep, absolutely. And I think Spielberg was worried because you can't have guns pointed at kids. I'm like, why not? Sometimes kids, they did it. I mean, maybe not today's era. I probably shouldn't say that. Okay, let's just move on. I would throw in two movies I got to mention before we head out of here. Die Hard. I watch it all the time. Probably the one action movie that I think holds up best next to Raiders. Like it's amazing how well that holds up still.
Yeah.
And the other one is Airplane. Now I know
Oh, classic.
it
For
feels
sure.
80s and it feels classic, but everything in that movie still hits, man. I mean, and if in fact while you're watching it, you kind of wish you saw more of it today. It's just like, it's so depressing we don't get more shit like this because I miss it. Being all
I would say that definitely counts. That there are people that are my age even that kind of grew up on it, and it hits our generation, and it hits the up and coming younger like Gen Z generations, and I feel like it's not one that's going away because it's just really crass and funny.
Last one for me is Psycho. I think Psycho really, really just holds up exquisitely. I mean,
Definitely.
Is my surprise face that you can't see because it's
see,
not on
I
video.
know, and it's probably not fair. Like anybody, a longtime listener is like, of course Hitchcock's going to be on there. Well, bitch, he was the best director ever. I don't know what to tell you. He made great movies, but I didn't say Rear
Is
Window.
Rear Window not popping up?
I didn't say Rear Window. I said Psycho. It is a movie that I've watched all the time, and no matter when I've watched it, black and white or not, that story frickin' holds up, and how it plays holds up. And I've seen people that have never even heard of it for whatever reason, because it's older probably, and they'll watch it and they're still surprised by how it ends. So yeah, I still think it's timeless.
Especially when Hitchcock actually locked people out of cinemas if they were late to the movie.
Way it should be.
That was insane.
That's how it should be.
It should be.
Man did never get to see a movie, but that's how it should be.
Okay, let's backtrack. I'm late to everything, but I'm not late to movies usually,
What?
unless there's like a really good reason.
What happened at the beginning of Spiral?
Listen, Aaron. It was like 2 minutes. I said very rarely.
Troy, anything from you? Any more from you?
I think that is my list.
Amanda?
I have one more to mention, and I'm surprised that it hasn't been mentioned yet. The Wizard of Oz, 1939.
You think it's timeless?
I think it is. Even though we know that this would be done better today, I don't feel like anybody who watches it now is distracted by the creation of then.
Everything plays, yeah.
Yeah.
The songs still work across the board. Performances are fantastic. There's no effect that takes you out of the movie. So yeah, okay. I would definitely see Wizard of Oz. Sure.
The Wizard, maybe he's not as sharp today.
Maybe, but I mean, is it really distraction in that movie?
The crushed witch underneath the house, and you're like, oh, those are just some legs sticking next to a house.
No, that still works.
But they don't show, yeah, but
I
I
never
mean,
thought there was a body to begin with.
Yeah.
I know how special effects work. Like, they didn't kill this lady to make this movie, although that would be fantastic. Like, back in the 30s, they were just like, whatever it takes. We don't have money. Kill old witches.
We must go for the realism effect.
I like it. Okay, we are talking iconic television shows. And if you didn't know who Troy Heinrichs is yet, he's also the host of the Blacklist Exposed, the Under the Dome podcast. See, joke throwback, worked great. He's done a ton of TV podcasts. He'd be on Westworld that we do together. I also do the Blacklist Exposed with him. He's known for television. So this is a perfect topic for him to join, even though it was last minute. He fit perfect. Okay, now iconic shows are typically defined as widely recognized and well established. And, you know, it should be noted that they're far and few between. We took a poll in our Facebook group, which we'll read those top 10 when we get there. But what was interesting to me is how often people saw an episode they loved as iconic, where I wouldn't say that would be defined as iconic. So why do you think that, what do you guys define as iconic? I should ask that like right off the bat. Like, how do you personally define? We know how it's defined, but there seems to be some confusion. So how do you see it?
Well, I think for me, iconic, when you talk in the terms of episodic television, is it something that, you know, the industry is like one kind of thing. Well, they'll talk about the Lost pilot was so much money, and, you know, it paved the way for so much things to come before it and things of that nature. I don't think that's the iconic piece of it. I think the iconic piece is when you talk to TV fans who are either a super high on the particular show, first of all, but even the people that are not super high on that show, where they can come together and they can say, man, did you see this episode? And then just go, wow, that episode was great. Even if you're not a fan of the show, they can agree, and they know, and it's been in the zeitgeist, so that when they're talking about it, it's definitely an episode that stands out overall amongst all the rest.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I would say as well. However, I would add when you're going to present a show to somebody, say, you know, hey, you really need to watch this show, and you decide, hey, what episode of this show is the one that somebody needs to see, and you say, okay, look, just watch this one episode. I know it's going to be out of order, and I know it's not going to make a lot of sense, but just watch this one episode, and if you think it's good after that, then watch the show. And that's usually the choice that, and that's how I usually see in like a choice as what iconic means for the show. Also, when it comes to imagery for the show that leaks out into the world, you know, things that get into people's like pop culture, that one image that is synonymous with the show. So that is usually from that one episode.
Yeah, I try to think of obviously things that reside in your subconscious from pop culture. You know, you think in terms of, what was it, the WKRP in Cincinnati, the Turkeys Fly episode? You know, I would consider that iconic because every Thanksgiving, people are constantly bringing that up, right? So that would be defined as iconic. That's the one episode you remember of that show, and it's an iconic episode of television you remember because of that moment. You know, there are a lot of those kinds of issues. To me, really, it comes down to, this is the best that series had to offer. This is the best, some among the best that television has ever had to offer. And that's how I arrive at iconic. So when people like name off 4 or 5 episodes from the same show, to me, that's not iconic. Those are your favorite episodes. You know, if you name the one and then bam, like John said, an instant image comes to mind, that's iconic to me. So why do you guys think so few episodes of television ever really become iconic?
You know what, as far as iconic is something you're going to put on a pedestal, and it means something, and it has power, and it has strength all by itself. And frankly, not everything has all the pieces of the Venn diagram to develop that iconic episode.
Yeah, if you were to talk about from a 4-quadrant box summer blockbuster movie template, I think that has to be the same case for an iconic episode. And one of those quadrants is that the show itself has to be almost groundbreaking or iconic, because you have so much television out there. You know, when you think about like MASH, Lost, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad, there are series that are just monster series in their own right. So then that iconic episode is easier because you have a series that stands out, versus if you just throw out like, you know, any other just generic TV show that's out there, like, I don't know, Fresh Off the Boat, or, even Goldbergs, right? Goldbergs is great. It's funny. It's awesome. But there's like no like iconic episode because not everybody thinks of the Goldbergs in like in a zeitgeist kind of feel. You have to have that zeitgeist mentality of the show first before you can pull an iconic episode out of it.
Oh, I like that. That's a good description. I would never would have added zeitgeist. That should be part of every conversation just because it's a fun word to say. Zeitgeist.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into it. Let's talk about iconic. Now, in terms of iconic, we want to start with the ones that are widely accepted as iconic that also speak to you as a fan. So we're going to go around. You can just do your 2 on your turn, but we're going to go John, Troy, myself. Give us your 2 episodes, John, first.
All right, so my first episode I want to talk about is from How I Met Your Mother, and that's the Slap Bet episode. This is our introduction to the Robin Sparkles little bit of the show, and that Robin Sparkles is used in GIFs. It's used as a response to things. It's out there and it's everywhere. But on top of that, the whole idea of the slap bet, which is something that people started doing, and it also exemplifies one of the great things about this show, about how well it plays with its own memory, because the slap bet happened in this episode, but it was something that carried through the rest of the series all the way to the very last episode. Again, it's something that just brings you right back to this episode, and it's great.
What is the slap bet? Is that like Seinfeld's The Contest? Is that what it is, or what?
Well, slap bet. So Barney and Marshall are just, when it comes to Robin, let's just get a little bit of the background on it. So people find out that Robin has this problem with going to malls, and it's like, why does she have this problem with going to malls? So Marshall says that she was married before, and Barney says it's because she's done porn. So the two of them, because they have this bet, they say, okay, well, if you're right, I get to slap you, and if I'm right, you slap me. You get it. You get the idea.
The gist, yeah.
The episode carries forward, and it turns out that Robin was never married, so Barney takes his chance to use his slap on Marshall and slaps him once. And then Barney discovers from somebody in Korea that there's a secret tape of Robin Sparkles that has Robin in the tape. So they're starting the tape, and they pause it, and Barney says, is there anything you want to tell me? And Robin goes, what are you guys doing? And that's when they tell her about the bet about slapping. So she plays the tape. And so Barney, thinking that he's right and it's porn, goes ahead and slaps Marshall. Well, after this, it turns out that Barney's also wrong. So now Marshall gets 5 slaps, either a choice of 5 slaps, or he gets to do 10 slaps right there and then, or 5 slaps whenever he wants. So this is where the whole slap bet playing throughout the rest of the series happens, because those 5 slaps are things that he doles out from season to season, and they find new and interesting ways to make it funny.
Okay, I could see how that can become iconic, especially for diehard fans of the show.
Especially after you got through the 4th one and you're like, when is the 5th one going to happen?
Yeah, because that one was pretty intense. The fifth one was just amazingly intense. And then my second show that I want to bring up, and this has to do a lot with, when you think of Lucy, you think of Lucy wearing the chef's hat. And that whole thing with Lucy wearing the chef's hat is from I Love Lucy, Job Switching. And that's an episode where Lucy and Ricky decide to switch jobs. And so he's going to stay home all day and do the housework and do the cleaning and do all this. And then she has to go out and get a job. So she gets a job in a candy factory, and her and Ethel are essentially doing the absolute worst jobs possible in a candy factory. Meanwhile, the guys are at home doing the absolute worst job and tearing apart the house and exploding chickens and everything you can think of in the house. And it's, again, this is one of those episodes that, when you see Lucy, you see her wearing the chef's hat from inside the candy factory. Mm-hmm. Now, one of the things that makes this episode great is the Ricky side of it, because he actually gets completely overshadowed in what he's doing, because he equally is as funny and as goofy as Lucy is. And it's a pretty fun episode for those reasons.
And it's rare, because he's never, I'm not discounting him, he's usually the straight man, more or less. Yeah. But it's rare he gets the opportunity to be as funny as Lucy. And that's probably why it's
true.
Out.
Yeah.
Those are 2 great picks, man. I love Lucy. I do.
I'm leaving again.
Thanks,
Bye.
Thanks. You're welcome. That was one of those shows that I just absolutely adored. She is a gem, and I know she's not. Can you be underrated when you're an icon? But I still think she's underrated. Like these days, I don't think she's appreciated because of all the comedy she crafted and led forward.
No, she definitely paved the way for a lot of the comedy we have these days.
Absolutely.
And, and Desi, on the other hand, is also somebody who paved the way for a lot of the acceptance that the Latin cultures are receiving these days. Because what you don't know about, or what you may or may not know about the background of that show, is that Desi, nobody wanted to pick up the show because nobody wanted to see a mixed race couple on television. And that was the argument, was that they were a mixed race couple. So it took some work to get them on television, and then to get them sharing a bed, and then get them to be all this other stuff. So yeah.
That's great. TV icons. Troy, what do you got? Now, should we may mention Amanda's picks too? Or do you want to cover that, or you want me to? What do you want to do before you get to yours?
Yeah, you could cover Amanda's.
Okay, well, one she wanted to mention, I want to know what you guys feel about this. Now, I will say her first one is definitely iconic. I don't know how you could argue it's not. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Once More with Feeling. Now, that is the musical episode. In my opinion, still the only musical episode that's catchy enough to really need one. I still think it's the only episode of television that ever really needed to be a musical. That one really worked. What are you guys' thoughts on Buffy Once More with Feeling?
I would say you're right in the Buffy choice. I would say that Scrubs the musical is just as iconic as Buffy, but it doesn't exist without the Buffy happening first. But that is a freaking great episode for Scrubs.
Is it? Because I didn't even know they had a musical episode.
Well, that's because you don't like Scrubs. So.
But it's not iconic. People don't know Buffy, but they know they had the musical episode. Just saying. Hey, I'm just saying.
Yeah, see, you just spent your coin on the wrong Scrubs episode. It's the Brendan Fraser episode of Scrubs that is iconic.
Well,
anyhow,
that's different. That's different.
Yeah,
that's the Feels episode.
All right, back to Buffy.
Here we are using Scrubs to overshadow Buffy. So yeah, that episode's actually amazing, and I think you're absolutely right that it needed to be a musical, and it was something that, like, musicals up until that point were something I kind of avoided because I just rolled my eyes at it, and that made it very fun and engaging, and yeah, it's great.
Good. Glad we can all agree. That's still a soundtrack I will listen to on occasion, if you can believe it. Don't know why. I don't know if I'm allowed to anymore because, showrunner. But the other episode, Dexter the Getaway. Now, if you don't know which one that is, it's the one where he's a lumberjack. I'm just kidding. It's not that one. It's the season 4 finale where he gets John Lithgow, but he doesn't get home in time for his woman. That's what she has is iconic. What do you think? And she's dead in the bathtub.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that qualifies. Because when you think of Dexter, you don't think of that episode or even that scene.
I do. That's the ending I think of. That's probably the first thing that comes to mind when I think of the show. Because he's holding his baby son and blood.
Yeah, I got nothing.
All right.
What about you, Troy?
Sorry, Amanda.
I've never watched Dexter, so I plead the fifth.
Well, I
think there are more iconic episodes than that one.
Okay.
In the plethora of television shows to pick from.
Well, Amanda, it's 1 to 2. Sorry, it's not iconic. But then again, I think the Scrubs idea should have been scrubbed. So what do you got, Troy?
I'm sending it to you to make you actually watch the episode now.
Yeah, I can't wait to fall asleep to that. What do you got?
For me, I'm going to start with a number, and that number is 33. And that is the pilot episode of Battlestar Galactica. This episode is one where you tell people, like, you should watch Battlestar Galactica. And then when you're done watching that, there was actually a 4-hour movie that happened before this. So if you really want to know what's going on, go watch that 4-hour movie and then continue on with the show.
I remember telling people that too. I
was like, what the hell is going on? It's like, oh wait, there were like 4 episodes before this. Okay.
Yep.
But no, 33 is, I think what 33 did was it set the stage for a different kind of sci-fi experience that we haven't seen on television up to this point because of the grit and the tiredness and the weight that every 33 minutes, the crew of Battlestar Galactica and the rest of the human race that left Caprica are fleeing from the Cylons constantly over and over and over again. And every 33 minutes, they're preparing for battle. And the Cylons show up and they barely escape because the jump drive is recharged. And they just, it's just constantly barraging for that entire hour. And then right at the last moment, the humans get a victory. And it sets up this entire arc for the entire first season where in the first season, it feels like humanity has no hope. And then the finale of season 1 gives them that glimmer of hope for the first time. And so they literally see the entire season play out in this one episode to start the show. And it's just, you get to be with the characters in a very gritty, real moment. So you see who Starbuck is, you see who Captain Adama is. You just get to see like a lot of these characters in like their worst possible situation to know what kind of characters they're going to be, and it basically sets you up for the rest of the run.
Yeah, that's a great pick. Yep, I would agree with that one.
Yeah, that's a pretty solid pick.
Now I want to go rewatch Battlestar Galactica. I really
don't do it.
Really do.
Just make sure you pay for the commercial-free version on Peacock, because when you throw the commercials in, it sucks.
Buddy, I got the box set. What are you talking about? All right.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
I'm going to put an actual disc into a tray. I'm going to put that bitch in, and I'm going to watch it.
Like a baby?
Exactly like a baby.
Until his nephew comes over and then breaks his disc.
Oh, man. That'll happen. That'll happen for sure. All right, what's your second one?
My second pick should come as no surprise from this TV show about a bunch of people on an island. This one is actually the season 4 episode, The Constant. And this is an episode where people that actually understand Lost and get lost and know that it's a character-driven show and not about the island.
Go piss right off.
This is the story of Desmond Hume and his battle with coming off of the island to a freighter ship. And because of that, he has some temporal anomalies going on with his brain as he's flashing back and forth between the past and the current present. And if he keeps flashing back and forth, he'll basically die if it keeps happening, because he'll basically lose his whole grip on reality. And his one constant to make himself whole again and stop the time jumping from happening is the love of his life, Penny Widmore. And it's just a real testament on the acting capability of the guy that plays Desmond. And then, of course, just the connection of people, the connection of longing, the love that people have. Because in this particular episode, as he's jumping back and forth, him and Penny are actually breaking up in the past. And she wants nothing to do with them. And he's basically ruined her life and doesn't want to see him again. And so you're like, oh my God, if they don't get together, he's going to die. Like, he can't die. He's the guy, right? He's the guy that knows all this stuff about the island. And as it plays out, as it goes along, he finally says, hey, I'm going to call you on Christmas Eve on this particular day and date. Please be by the phone, so that when he's in the present, he actually does make that phone call. And Penny just happens to pick up, and it's like, oh my God, all the feels every single time. Just watch it and you just go, this is why we watch Lost. It's because it's for the characters, it's for the emotion. And when you talk to people, it's like, that's the one they pick out from the entire series.
What's interesting about your description there, Henry Cusick is his name.
Henry Cusick, yes.
As you said, that nothing can happen to him because he's the guy that knows everything about the island. It's almost like the island matters. Yeah.
At that point in the show, we all thought the island mattered.
Oh,
yes.
And then it just stopped mattering because we didn't care anymore because they couldn't figure it out. I understand. Yeah, these White Rock, Black Rock. Yeah, it all makes sense now. Anyway, that is a great episode of television, even though it wasn't all about the characters. We can argue that all day. That's a different show. But in terms of that particular episode, that was brilliantly structured, and I could see why some see that as iconic. But I would argue a different one would be iconic, but I'll let John, I don't know if John wants to speak to this one before I say anything about the other one.
No, I love this episode, and I think this is the episode that I would point somebody to say, if you have any interest in checking out this show, watch this episode first and then make a decision based off of that.
See, I think Through the Looking Glass is probably more iconic for me. Like, when I think of the show, that's the episode I always think of. Not Penny's Boat, not Penny's Boat, not Penny's Boat. That's always the episode I think of. Because for me, probably because for me it was the most moving episode, because Charlie finally accepts something dire and basically is a hero in that moment and does everything he could to warn people, to tell people of the things they needed to know. I'm trying not to spoil something that's like 10 years old, 15 years old, whatever. And the show for me was never the same after that episode. So, I mean, that was my peak, but I could see The Constant for sure. That's beloved by many, and it's really, really brilliantly structured.
I mean, if you talk about a real iconic episode where it's like, you have to watch this episode and you'll be hooked. I think season 1, episode 4, Walkabout, that episode was the one where you just kind of like literally crapped your pants and went, what is this show and what just happened?
Oh, when you find out he was in a wheelchair the whole time?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah, I ruined that for you.
Through the Looking Glass is That one you have to say is, when it comes to what's out there in pop culture, that image of the hand with Not Penny's boat on it is out there everywhere.
And that might be for me why it stands out. All right, so my two, Breaking Bad, Ozymandias. And the title alone really explains what they wanted to say as Ozymandias, as the sonnet or poem written by Percy Shelley, which detailed a traveler who comes across this broken down statue of Ozymandias, the King of Kings. Behold what I have built, only to be centered in a vastly empty nothingness. Essentially foretelling that Walter White's ending was going to be a king with nothing to show for it. So the episode takes this real quiet minute to reflect on the calm of Walter's previous life, before starting meth, before he got into it, everything that he had already in his grasp, and he just let slip away for this fleeting need he had to be powerful and rich and feared. And so then we shoot back to where they're in the desert in the aftermath of a shootout, which I still commend them on the previous episode not ending on this portion of this episode, because you actually end on the shootout from the previous episode and you're like, well, what happened? Well, this starts right where that shootout is, and it's very pivotal to the rest of the episode, and I'm so glad that they did that, because You get the aftermath of the shootout. Hank's wounded. Walter's desperately trying to save both of their lives from Jack, because he's always done this. He's always been able to talk himself out of whatever situation he's gotten into, but he'd never gotten into it with these guys before, and they were on a different level. And the moment when Hank looks at him and says, "You're the smartest guy I ever met, but you're too stupid to see he made his mind up 10 minutes ago." It's one of the most heartbreaking moments in television I can remember. And I saw all my favorite characters die on Game of Thrones. So this was particularly brutal. Walter loses his family, his money. Jesse becomes a meth slave. Hank loses a lot more. And the episode ends with this family destroyed and Walter White on the run. And it's still one of the most carefully plotted, scripted, and shot episodes of television ever.
Yeah, this one's amazing. This is that episode right here for sure. I love it, and that's a good choice.
Yeah, and I think it's because of the way the previous episode leads into it, as Aaron said. Because I remember the previous episode going like, "What?" And you have to immediately hit play to see the next episode, and then just to watch like what? Why are they going flashing back and stuff? Just tell me what happened, and then they get to it, and it's like, oh, okay.
And I love that they call it Ozymandias, because there's one thing that I always thought was funny was, Watchmen. People said it was such a mystery. I'm like, the guy's name's Ozymandias. I mean, if you know the poem, he's probably the bad guy. I'm just saying. So my other iconic episode, and this is my favorite episode of this entire series. It's also the one that I know back to front to back. I absolutely adore it. And I loved it so much that my coworkers gave me a creeper with a dummy attached to it on Halloween once, because they knew that I would appreciate it. It was one of the best gifts I ever got. It was so thoughtful. Home from the X-Files. This is the episode that was so controversial. It was actually pulled from repeats and only aired once on Fox. The only time it didn't air again until like a year later on FX or something like that for one of their 24-hour episode plays. There were so many complaints, they pulled it from rotation. So Home finds Mulder and Scully investigating this deformed infant that was found in a sandlot, only to locate the Peacock family. And they've lived in the same house, off the land, with no power or water for eons. And they procreate through family means. And what I mean by that is they make Jamie and Cersei look like amateurs. So they get into it. So it's nothing less than one of the best episodes of television ever. It's the best episode of horror TV ever. And it had a limbless woman on a creeper who was more terrifying than anything Jason or Freddy ever did. That's my number two.
And I believe that's the only episode that ever carried a TV MA rating and had a viewer discretion warning in the front of it for the entire series.
Yeah.
That's such a good pick.
Oh, do you guys remember that one?
Oh yeah, this is a solid pick. This is one of those few times where TV actually freaked me out.
Was like bury a kid alive in that episode?
It was very unnerving. Yeah, this is one I'd never want to spoil for people. I really want people to watch it. It's on Hulu. The whole X-Files is on there. Find Home. I believe it's season 4. Go watch that episode. This is definitely one you don't need to know anything about anybody. You can just watch the episode. It is a standalone. And my God, it's good.
Yeah, second
It is so
episode
good.
of season 4.
Yep, there you go. Okay, so now give us one episode of television that you personally find iconic and why. John, same rotation.
All right. So the one that I'm going to bring up is something that I'm sure we have a lot of listeners who are going to agree with me, and that's from Doctor Who, and it's an episode called Blink. It's from 2007. And this is David Tennant, but it's actually very David Tennant light because this is the episode that introduces us to the Weeping Angels, and it stars Carey Mulligan as Sparrow, who is called to a mansion, and because she got a note, and it's just an amazing piece of television. This is another one of these examples of something that when you show an angel to somebody, they know immediately where it's from, what it means, and how important this episode is. This is also my episode to show to people when people say, why should I watch Doctor Who? Watch this one episode. And you can see what kind of brilliance goes into this show to create something like this. And again, just spectacular. Chef kiss for this one.
But what does it mean to you? Like, why did you pick that one? Does it connect with you in a certain way?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like this is again one of those pieces of television that scared me, and not like Home did, because when I saw Home, I was like, I am not going to Alabama ever. But
It was Pennsylvania, just so you know. It was Pennsylvania.
Same difference.
Filmed in Georgia.
It's one of those. Yeah, it's one of those ones. Florida is another one that scares me. But hey, I live there, so whatever. This is one of those. It's just the way it's shot, the way it's filmed, the way they tell their story, how they use the Doctor. It's just engaging on every single realm.
It's good.
That is good. Now, Amanda's personal pick is actually number 1 on the listener poll, so you guys can wait for that one. So, Troy, what is your personal iconic episode?
Yeah, I think this one's a little bit of a Wayback Machine since I'm older, but I really enjoy when people talk to me about West Wing, and it's called The Two Cathedrals. It's one of the later episodes of season 2. It basically breaks down this way that Jed Bartlett is president of the United States. He has lied to the people that work for him and the people of America that he has MS. And there's a tragedy that kind of happens at the end of season 1, and that kind of plays into what happens here at this point in season 2, because he has his basically right-hand administrative assistant that's been with him his whole life. So the episode previous to this, something tragic happens to his administrative assistant, and we're basically at the funeral for her in this episode, The Two Cathedrals. And you get a little bit of a flashback about her life and how Jed and her met, and his relationship on why he believes so deeply in the Lord Almighty, God our Father, Jesus Christ, and all of the church stuff that he puts into his presidency. And so when this woman is taken from him, and he literally has this, I think it's like a 5-minute monologue of a discussion in an empty cathedral, president versus God, and just the raw emotion that he faces in his faith crisis that he's having in this moment about, why I've done everything for you. I've praised your name. I relations with Mexico are better. I created all these jobs. I did everything you wanted me to do. Why did you take her from me? And he basically tells God to F off because when he was a younger kid, he smokes a cigarette and drops it in the chapel at their boarding home and puts it out, and his dad basically scolds him for disrespecting God's house. So at the end of the monologue, he actually lights up a cigarette, smokes one puff, and then drops it on the ground and puts it out and walks out on God, basically. And so wow. it basically is like as a testament to his entire presidency and just how he turns his back on God. And then how does he deal with that and move on into the election that's coming up to get him reelected.
That's interesting. I totally forgot about that episode. That's a great episode. I remember that one now. Martin Sheen is the bomb, right?
I mean, yeah, definitely. I mean, he still was. I mean, he was in, I saw him in something recently. I don't know if it was a TV show or a movie. I mean, still bringing it to this day.
Still bringing it. And Emilio is on, Mighty Ducks on Disney Plus, starting to look like Martin.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Definitely in the weight factor.
All right. So, wow. All right. So definitely my personal pick that is iconic to me. I think you guys will know it once I explain it. You might not know it off the title, but Moonlighting. It's called Atomic Shakespeare. It's like this Princess Bride version of Shakespeare via moonlighting as The Taming of the Shrew with sexy satire, pop culture riffs, and a fantastically musical wedding. And it's so bonkers. It's absurdly beautiful, and has always been one of my favorite episodes of television ever. It's also like a prime example of why moonlighting, when every cylinder was firing, was one of the best shows on television ever. Like, that show was able to be way more than just another cute couple, flirty, romantic mystery detective show. There were so many other things happening. They did so many breakings of the fourth wall. They did this episode, which was ridiculous, but amazing. And then they just kept doing things like that throughout the run up until things fell apart. Like, I'll never forget, I think it was season 2 finale. They had been fighting and had so many issues that they couldn't finish the season. So they ended the episode on the back lot, basically saying that they couldn't finish the season. It's like, it was just, they had so many moments of brilliance, but this one episode really captured all of it, because I don't like The Princess Bride. I'm not a fan, but this has a very similar story structure, and it worked brilliantly for me. Do you guys know which episode I'm talking about?
No, I missed that one.
I mean, it's a long time ago.
Well,
That's even older than me.
It's a wonderful, no, it's not. It's a wonderful episode of television. Atomic Shakespeare, moonlighting, Bruce Willis at the best he's ever been, Sybil Shepherd at the best she's ever been. And that episode is the best that show ever was. So if you can ever find it, it's a great one. Honorable mentions, John, anything?
I got one that I want to talk about, which is Supernatural Changing Channels episode from season 5, episode 8. If you've seen anything, some images from Supernatural, you've seen them either killing things or you've seen images from this one episode. And if you don't remember what the episode is, or you want to get his quick synopsis, Sam and Dean get sucked into an alternate universe by an angel or a trickster demon or whatever it is that he is, and they get put into episodes of television. So there's like a spoof episode of Grey's Anatomy that they're in, which they call it Dr. Sexy, and they do all the tropes from Grey's Anatomy. They get sucked into a sitcom and do a bunch of sitcom-y tropes. They get sucked into a Japanese game show. And one of the reasons why I think this episode is so iconic is because for the show itself, this is the episode where they said, hey, by the way, some point, we're just going to make the show about these two clowns and not really give a shit about monsters anymore. And they kind of held to that premise, and they allowed these two characters to just have so much fun with these roles.
Son of a bitch. That's literally everything I know about Supernatural. Son of a bitch. I've seen that scene I don't know how many times. Sorry.
Yeah, and this is a instead of him saying like angrily or anything like that, he just says it with so much fun and caring. He's like, son of a bitch.
All right, Troy, what is your honorable mention? Anything?
I'm probably going to have to go with, I would have to say one that really stands out was season 4, episode 19 of Fringe, which I'll have to tread lightly here because I don't think Aaron has gotten this far yet in his watch. So I don't want to spoil it for him because it's amazing. But
I'll
basically,
eventually
season
finish
4,
it. I promise. I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Season 4, episode 19 was a backdoor pilot, if you will, to basically earn the 5th season of Fringe. It actually gives us a glimpse into the future with, of course, our good friend and brother, Desmond Hume, as the actor in this episode. And maybe that's why it's iconic. I don't know. But it basically sets up the stage for what in the hell has been going on in Fringe the entire time. And it kind of gives you the answer. And then season 5 is like, how do we solve the problem? And so I think when people go back and look at Fringe and say like, wow, this was totally out of left field. It never really fit the structure of the show because it was literally dropped in the middle of a season while we were already on a pretty intense pace for the end of the 4th season, that it just stands out. And you just go like, wow, I can't believe they made that piece of television in a show that actually connected to everything else when none of the major cast was actually in the show to begin with. So it was just fascinating on how much effort they put into that to make it happen. And Clark Middleton was in that episode as well.
Oh, poor Clark. I miss Clark. Well, mine is going to be one that I think everybody here is going to know right off the bat. But you might think something happens in it that doesn't. It's Walking Dead: Last Day on Earth. This is the season 6 finale. It's the episode where Negan first appears, where we first get Negan rolling out of his camper and everybody lined up on the ground waiting for justice. He gives that big speech about eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and you can cry, and you see him wield his Lucille down on somebody. We don't see Glenn and Abraham actually die in this episode. So you might think, well, wouldn't that be more iconic? I don't think so. I think actually this is the episode where Walking Dead stopped being great television.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
For whatever reason, they decided to hold it over, and I get it, probably because they, for ratings, bring people back to find out who died and everything else. But I thought this is the only episode where Negan was threatening, in my opinion. I actually enjoyed Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance in this episode. He was intimidating while also kind of being wily and kind of a little nutty. And the whole episode, the build up to that moment was fantastic. While they're trying to play games, they're showing their dominance, and Rick is being played the whole episode. Rick and his whole crew is being played the whole episode. It's actually a really well structured, well built episode, and everything up until that moment was fantastic. But as soon as they came back, they kept getting things wrong, and you'll notice the ratings plummeted after that. They just, every year after that was like a 50% decline. They just never measured up to the greatness that was that episode and many episodes that came before that, the Flowers episode and a lot of other ones. But that is the one that will always be in my mind. Whenever I think of Walking Dead, the first picture I come up with is Negan standing over them, because I think that was the defining moment of the show for me. I was like, God, this is the greatest moment of television. Holy shit. They've always been one step ahead. They figured things out. They've all been duped. They've been played. And then it comes back to this weak, gratuitous, excessive, just dumpster fire, literally.
Yeah, season 7, episode 1 was probably the grossest thing on television I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's completely unnecessary too, wasn't it?
Totally unnecessary.
Yep.
I mean, not even like the smashing of their heads, which was just way over the top, and the fact they focused on it to the point where like the eyeball was, no. I mean, but then like Rick escapes and he's like hanging from the zombie, and the zombie's like literally being torn apart from that bridge, and you just see the guts extending out and separating. It's like season 7, episode 1 just took it in a completely wrong direction. It was always about the humanity, and now it was just about the gore and the violence.
Yep.
Yeah, that was officially the episode that I just turned the TV off and looked at my wife and said, I'm done. And I have not watched another episode since. I could not do it anymore. And though I actually read the comic, I knew it was coming, but after that episode, and especially how they showed it, because they were very true to comic in that one, I just couldn't do it anymore. Yeah.
And then, I mean, how many times did he swing that bat to the point where they show a headless Glenn? And it's just like, what? Just stop. I mean, it was so poorly done. So that's why the episode before, where you get all the way up to there, because that's, to me, there's nothing better in that show. There is no episode that is better, because I was at the edge of my seat the entire episode, because you're wondering like, who's going to get it? What's going to happen? And then they do that weak tease where you like, come back next year and then you can find out. I'm like, you assholes. That was a bad move. And then to come back to where it went was just disappointing all the way around.
Well, could you then say that season 7, episode 1 was iconic also in a bad way?
No, because I don't remember the episode. I mean, I only remember that it turned me off of the show. I remember the repulsiveness of Glenn, but I couldn't tell you anything else that happened in that episode off the top of my head. Everything in the episode before, I can tell you what happened. I mean, I remember the whole episode. So to me, that's more iconic. That moment of Glenn getting killed is probably iconic, but the whole episode, I don't think the episode is.
That makes sense.
All right, that's our list. You guys ready for what listeners chose? Their top 10.
Yeah, let's see what they got.
Drum roll. Number 10, Star Trek, The Next Generation, The Best of Both Worlds.
Hands down. Fantastic episode.
John's just like, okay. All right.
He's been assimilated by the Borg already. He's already part of the collective.
Ooh.
I'm not going to, what's that? I'm not going to resist.
The Haunting of Hill House, Two Storms.
That should be higher up.
Wow. I'm surprised it's even on here, honestly. That's pretty recent. Battlestar Galactica 33. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Once More with Feeling. Seinfeld, The Contest. Now, in case you don't know what The Contest is, it's trying not to masturbate. It's to see who can hold out the longest. And the fact that there is actually a contest because they could go that long is amazing to me. But it's a great episode of television. MASH, The Death of Henry Blake. Ooh, that's a good episode. Breaking Bad, Ozymandias. Lost, The Constant is number 3. You'd be happy to know, Troy. And the final 2, you know what's amazing for a show that so many people just don't want to remember ever again. But they can't forget these 2 episodes. Game of Thrones, Battle of the Bastards. Let's talk about that one first. Would you agree that is iconic?
Oh, for sure.
No, I actually don't.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing piece of television. And I think it's great. But when it comes to Game of Thrones, only one of them sticks in my brain. That, and one of them is by and far agreed on as one of the most iconic pieces of television, and that's not this one.
No, it's not, but I could see the case because it has probably the best battle scene ever in television.
True.
Even though I'm still saying Jon Snow got a break on that one, you know.
A little bit.
But it was still a fantastic battle because, well, let's face it, the opposition's plan was way smarter, which doesn't really happen in television that often, especially in shows like this. But number 1 is Game of Thrones, Reigns of Castamere, which you might remember is the Red Wedding episode. So the Red Wedding is so prominent, everybody calls it the Red Wedding episode.
Yeah, you almost think it's the title of the episode.
Mm-hmm. So what do you guys think about the Red Wedding? Why that one? Other than, you know, because I thought about this because I've rewatched, every season that came out, I rewatched the series up to that point. So I've rewatched season 2 at least 8 times. At least. I don't know if that's sad or fantastic, but I have. Or at least 7 times, sorry. And that episode still always works for me. So I guess you think it would be the surprise of it all, but it's really not. It's just it still catches you off guard in some way, even though you know absolutely everything that's happening. Can anybody explain this to me?
It's just everything from the acting to the cinematography to the way they laid out the story to it's just everything about it was like hits every quadrant perfectly.
It lulled you into a false sense of security, much like they all were. And you kind of just was like sitting back going like, oh yeah, happy, joyous, feast, whatever. And then all of a sudden it's like stabbed, kill, death, destroy. Oh my God, what is happening on the screen? And then it's so iconic that they actually use it as a storyline in, what was it, season 7, episode 1, where she comes in and actually kills the entire family wearing his face.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the fact that they like go back to that story point again just tells you how iconic that episode was, because then she comes in and does it like even more badass way.
Yeah, and Michelle Fairley, she played that so well. Like when her son is killed and just her real horrified grief at it all and realize it's probably her fault they're there. You know, I mean, just that realization is just phenomenal. Honestly, phenomenal. And also, that is probably, even though we had the moment where Ned loses his head, we've already had that. So you would think that would be the moment where people are like, oh, everybody is expendable now. Everybody, it's always up for grabs. I don't think it really sank in until the Red Wedding.
No, it really didn't. That's like, yeah, when Ned they lopped off Ned's head, and that was the episode that made me go, okay, I can't ever stop watching this. But then I got lulled into a false sense of security, and I was just enjoying everything, and I thought Rob was getting to be really cool, and there's no way Caitlyn's gonna, oh my God, they're dying.
So good.